What if the babysitter you trusted turned out to be your worst nightmare? A secret job, a mysterious disappearance, and a horrifying obsession. This isn't just a crime story. It's the chilling truth behind the babysitter from hell. Stay with us as we unravel the terrifying fate of Rachel Barber and the shocking betrayal no one saw coming. In 1999, a father arrived at a local train station to pick up his teenage daughter, as he did every day after school. But when the train pulled into the station, the doors slid open and passengers spilled out. His daughter was nowhere to be seen. Assuming she might have been delayed or caught the next train, the father parked his car and decided to wait. However, as train after train arrived without her stepping off, a sense of unease began to creep in. Convinced she must have found an alternate way home, he eventually left the station, unaware of devastating events that await him. What unfolded from that day would forever alter their family's story, plunging them into a nightmare no one could have foreseen. Back in 1998, the Barber family led a modest but joyful life in Melbourne, Australia. Michael and Elizabeth Barber had been happily married for 2 decades, raising 3 lively daughters aged 9, 11, and 15. Despite financial struggles that kept them living paycheck to paycheck, their home was filled with laughter, creativity, and love. Michael worked as a toy designer, while Elizabeth contributed to the world of children's literature. Together, they encouraged their children to embrace their creative talents. The youngest, Heather, was discovering her vocal abilities, charming the family with her sweet singing. Ashley Rose, the middle child, had a knack for playing the flute, captivating audiences with her melodies. But it was Rachel, the eldest, who truly shone. A graceful dancer with radiant emerald eyes and striking charisma, she was the pride of the family. Rachel's natural charm and beauty made her a magnet for admiration. Her family affectionately called her Rachel Star, a testament to her dazzling potential. Yet beneath the surface, Rachel faced her own battles. Academic subjects like math and science felt insurmountable, leaving her frustrated. She also struggled with severe anxieties, an intense fear of the dark, a reluctance to engage with strangers, and an overwhelming dread of using public transport alone. These fears often made her heavily reliant on her parents, leading her mother to humorously quip that Rachel was 15 going on 12. When these challenges began to weigh heavily on Rachel's emotional well-being, her parents took action. Knowing her passion for dance was the one thing that lit up her world, they enrolled her in a full-time dance academy in Richmond, a bustling suburb about 20 minutes from their home. The move was transformative. Rachel thrived at her new school, forming close friendships, exploring opportunities in modeling, and even finding romance with a boy named Manny. For 5 months, Rachel embraced her new routine, but her seemingly perfect life was about to take a dark turn. On March 1st, 1999, Rachel began her day as usual. She and her father left their home together, driving to Wattle Park train station. As they arrived, Michael reminded her, "I'll pick you up at 6:15 tonight." Rachel smiled warmly and assured him she would be there before stepping gracefully toward the platform. Michael lingered just long enough to watch her disappear up the stairs before heading home. Later that evening, Michael returned to Wattle Park Station as planned. At 6:15 p.m., the familiar train rolled in, but Rachel wasn't among the passengers. Assuming she had missed it, Michael waited for the next one. Minutes turned into hours, but Rachel never arrived. Michael grew increasingly uneasy as he glanced outside. The sky had turned dark, and he couldn't shake the thought of his daughter, Rachel, being alone in the night. He knew how much she hated the dark and being by herself. Despite his growing concern, he reassured himself that she'd appear any moment. Sitting in his car at the station parking lot, he watched train after train roll in, only to realize with every passing minute that Rachel wasn't on any of them. Without cell phones, contacting her wasn't an option. He waited, but when no sign of Rachel emerged, Michael left the parking lot and headed to his parents' home nearby. Once inside, he quickly grabbed their phone and called his wife, Elizabeth, back at their house. "Is Rachel home? Did one of her friends drop her off?" he asked anxiously. Elizabeth's answer confirmed his fears. Rachel hadn't come home, nor had she called. The absence of communication was completely out of character for Rachel. She was always punctual, and if there was any delay, she'd make sure to call. Michael and Elizabeth knew this wasn't a simple delay. Something was wrong. Michael promised to return home quickly, but before he could, Elizabeth picked up the phone again and called Monty, Rachel's boyfriend. She hoped Rachel might have been with him or at least had spoken to him. However, Monty told her that he hadn't seen Rachel since earlier in the day, and she hadn't reached out. When Elizabeth pressed Monty for details about their last meeting, he recalled they had gone to a shopping mall near their school in Richmond. Rachel had been excited about a specific pair of blue, chunky platform shoes she intended to buy the following day. Elizabeth immediately recognized the shoes. Just a day earlier, Rachel had tried to convince her to purchase the same pair, but with a price tag of $100, they were simply too expensive. Hearing Monty's account, Elizabeth couldn't help but wonder, how did Rachel plan to afford them? Monty explained that Rachel had mentioned a secret job that she claimed would cover the cost. However, Rachel had refused to share any further details, insisting the job was harmless and nothing to worry about. But as Elizabeth listened, her concern deepened. A 15-year-old girl with a secret job, out at night, offering no information to her family. It didn't sit right. After hanging up with Monty, Elizabeth began calling Rachel's friends, acquaintances, and familiar hangouts in a desperate attempt to locate her. Unfortunately, no one had seen or heard from her. When Michael finally arrived home, Elizabeth updated him, but they were no closer to finding their daughter. Overcome with worry, Michael left again, heading straight to the police station. At the station, Michael pleaded with officers to take action, emphasizing that Rachel's disappearance was entirely out of character. However, the response he received was disheartening. The police viewed the situation as a typical case of a teenager staying out late or running away, a scenario they believed would resolve itself by morning. They told Michael to go home and wait, advising him to return if Rachel hadn't appeared in a few days. Frustrated and distraught, Michael had no choice but to leave. That night was agonizing for the family. Michael, Elizabeth, and their two other daughters spent the hours in a restless state, worrying about Rachel's fate. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the sky, the parents rushed into the kitchen, hoping against hope that Rachel had returned during the night. But the kitchen was empty. Rachel was still missing. Early on the second day of Rachel's disappearance, Michael and Elizabeth received new information that briefly gave them hope. Monty, Rachel's boyfriend, reached out to share a detail he had remembered from their last conversation. Rachel had reassured him that her secret job was completely safe and that she wouldn't be alone. An old female friend would be there, playing some role at the job site to ensure her safety. This revelation brought mixed emotions to Rachel's parents. On one hand, they were somewhat comforted by the idea that their daughter, who was deeply afraid of being alone, wasn't by herself. On the other hand, they couldn't figure out who this old female friend could be. Hoping for clarity, Michael and Elizabeth began contacting all of Rachel's friends, new and old, male and female, but every call led to a dead end. All of Rachel's friends were accounted for, and none had any information about her whereabouts. The only other piece of information they uncovered came from some of Rachel's school friends. They revealed that the day before Rachel went missing, they had walked her to the train station after school. One friend even offered Rachel a ride home to spare her the train trip, but Rachel declined, saying her father would be picking her up at Wattle Park at 6:15 p.m. This puzzled Michael and Elizabeth. Did Rachel truly believe she could finish her secret job and still make it to meet her father on time? Or had she fabricated the story to avoid taking the ride, intending to pursue her secret job instead? These lingering questions gnawed at the couple as they grappled with the unimaginable. 24 hours had passed, and Rachel hadn't called or returned home. This wasn't the Rachel they knew. Could the police's suggestion that she had run away be true? Michael and Elizabeth were left feeling as though they barely knew their daughter anymore. Despite their heartbreak, they continued searching tirelessly, speaking to everyone they could and retracing Rachel's steps. Days passed with no answers, only frustration as every lead turned cold. Then, A breakthrough came on Monday, March 8th, exactly 1 week after Rachel's disappearance. A girl named Allison, who had attended dance class with Rachel before she transferred schools, overheard her younger sister talking about Rachel's case. Shocked to learn that Rachel had been missing for an entire week, Allison immediately contacted the police, as she realized she had seen Rachel on the very night she disappeared. Allison explained that at 6:40 p.m. that Monday, she had been on a train headed to Paran, a southeastern suburb near Rachel's home. At Richmond Station, Allison noticed Rachel boarding the train with another girl she didn't recognize. The two sat together at the other end of the train, chatting and laughing as though they were close friends. Not wanting to intrude, Allison didn't pay much attention, but as the train approached Paran Station, she prepared to get off. At that moment, she noticed Rachel and the mystery girl standing to exit as well. As they left the train, Rachel and Allison exchanged smiles and a quick wave, but no words. Allison watched as Rachel and the girl walked down the platform, still engrossed in their conversation. To her, it was clear they were intentionally heading somewhere together. There was no indication that Rachel was in distress or being forced to go along. When Michael and Elizabeth learned about this sighting, they were left with a mix of relief and unease. On one hand, Rachel had been with a friend, possibly the same old female friend she had mentioned to Monty. That meant she wasn't alone and might have felt safe. On the other hand, this raised even more questions. Who was this mystery girl? What role did she play in Rachel's disappearance? And most importantly, where was their daughter now? As Rachel's disappearance entered its second week, Michael, Elizabeth, and the police worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. The focus shifted to identifying the mysterious girl seen with Rachel on the train. On Thursday, March 11th, the police brought in a sketch artist to work with Allison, the witness who had spotted Rachel and her companion. Allison described the girl as older than Rachel, heavier, and plain-looking. The resulting sketch provided a potential breakthrough in the case. Meanwhile, investigators traced all incoming calls to the Barber household from the day before Rachel vanished. Their efforts uncovered 2 private calls, one made at 5:24 p.m. lasting 15 minutes, and another shortly afterward that lasted 30 minutes. These calls raised suspicion, and within 24 hours, police identified the caller, a 20-year-old woman named Caroline Robertson. Caroline bore a striking resemblance to the sketch and lived near the Paran train station, where Rachel was last seen with the mystery girl. Furthermore, she was an old acquaintance of the Barber family and had once babysat Rachel. This connection made it highly likely that Caroline was the person Rachel referred to as the old female friend involved in her secret job. Believing they were close to solving the case, the police headed to Caroline's apartment near the train station that same evening. Arriving at 5:25 p.m., they knocked on the door, announcing themselves and calling for Rachel and Caroline. When no one responded, they tried the door handle but found it locked. They contacted the property's real estate agent, who provided spare keys, but even those couldn't unlock the door due to a special latch secured from the inside. Determined to gain entry, officers searched the perimeter of the building and noticed a second-floor window was slightly open. They quickly called the fire department, who arrived with a ladder to access the window. One officer climbed up, peered inside, and saw what initially appeared to be an ordinary bedroom. However, his gaze soon fell on a body lying face down near the bed, Caroline. The officer immediately called for backup, and the team entered the apartment. Caroline was unconscious but still alive. She was rushed to the hospital while other officers began a thorough search of the apartment, desperate to locate Rachel. The scene inside was chaotic, with belongings and boxes scattered everywhere, suggesting Caroline might have been preparing to move. Despite their efforts, there was no sign of Rachel. The only potential clue was a bag of clothes that seemed to fit Rachel's size rather than Caroline's, but it was unclear if they truly belonged to Rachel. Investigators also collected other suspicious items, including rubber gloves, hair dye, financial documents indicating bankruptcy, and notebooks filled with strange writings. Each item was cataloged in the hope that it might lead to Rachel. At the hospital, Caroline regained consciousness, though she appeared disoriented and confused. Understanding the urgency of the situation, The medical team allowed police to question her immediately. Time was running out, and Rachel's life could depend on whatever answers Caroline could provide. When officers entered Caroline's hospital room, they wasted no time. The first question was direct. "Do you know where Rachel Barber is?" Caroline, visibly shaken, hesitated before simply answering, "Yes." What unfolded over the following months was a chilling story, pieced together from Caroline's fragmented memories and corroborated evidence that would forever haunt Melbourne's police force. On Sunday, February 28, 1999, the day before Rachel disappeared, Caroline made a call to Rachel, presenting an enticing offer. She claimed to be conducting a confidential psychology study and needed participants. To ensure secrecy, Caroline stressed that Rachel couldn't tell anyone about the arrangement. The job seemed simple, and for her participation, Rachel would earn $100, more than enough to buy the blue platform shoes she had been dreaming about. The plan required Rachel to meet Caroline the next evening at Richmond train station after school. From there, they'd travel together to Prahran, head to Caroline's apartment, and conduct the study. Rachel, eager to earn the money, agreed without hesitation. On Monday, March 1st, Rachel followed the plan. After school, she met Caroline at the station. The two boarded a train to Prahran, with Allison spotting them on board. After arriving, they grabbed pizza and beer from a nearby shop before heading to Caroline's apartment. Once inside, Caroline led Rachel upstairs to her bedroom. The two sat on the floor, chatting and laughing as they ate. Caroline then told Rachel it was time to start the study. She instructed Rachel to close her eyes, breathe deeply, and focus on positive thoughts. Rachel, unsuspecting, followed the instructions. Caroline paced the room, occasionally guiding Rachel to remain calm and focused. Unbeknownst to Rachel, the pizza she had eaten was laced with sedatives. As the drugs began to take effect, Caroline watched closely, waiting for Rachel to drift into a dazed state. When Rachel was visibly lethargic, Caroline moved behind her with a telephone cord. Without warning, she wrapped it around Rachel's neck and pulled tightly. Rachel, startled, tried desperately to free herself. She clawed at the cord, struggling against Caroline, but Caroline was larger and stronger. The struggle was brief, and Rachel eventually went limp. Caroline held the cord firmly for several more minutes to ensure Rachel was dead. Caroline dragged Rachel's lifeless body to a closet and shut the door. It stayed there for 2 days until Caroline retrieved it. She wrapped Rachel's body in a carpet and stuffed it into a large duffel bag she had purchased specifically for this purpose. Caroline then called a taxi, loaded the bag into the vehicle, and traveled to her father's vacation home in rural Kilmore. There, she buried Rachel in a shallow grave beside the resting place of one of her childhood pets. As police combed through Caroline's chaotic apartment, they uncovered journals that revealed her deeply rooted self-hatred and obsession with Rachel. Caroline loathed her appearance and life, while she idolized Rachel's beauty, charm, and perceived perfection. Her twisted plan was to erase her identity and assume Rachel's life. Caroline's journals detailed how she intended to lose weight, undergo plastic surgery, and legally change her name to Rachel Barber. The psychology study was nothing more than bait to lure Rachel into her trap. In November 2000, Caroline Robertson pleaded guilty to the life-taking of Rachel Barber. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but was released in January 2015 after serving just 15 years. Rachel's death left a lasting impact. Her mother, Elizabeth Barber, documented the tragedy in her book, The Perfect Victim, which was later adapted into a major film. On March 24, 1999, Rachel's body was laid to rest in a funeral attended by over 850 mourners. Letters, poems, and mementos were buried with her, including the blue platform shoes she had wanted so badly. Rachel Barber's story is a heartbreaking reminder of trust misplaced and the devastating consequences of envy and obsession. And that's the harrowing story of Rachel Barber, a life cut tragically short by obsession and envy. Her story serves as a chilling reminder to value trust and vigilance in our everyday lives. What do you think drives such terrifying betrayals? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We'll be back with more stories that will leave you speechless.